Welcome back. We learned to install and set up the Spark development environment on our local machines. However, stream processing in Apache Spark often works with Apache Kafka. Apache Kafka is the most popular real-time data integration system, and Spark often reads data in real time from a Kafka server. So, you may also need to set up Kafka server on your machine. In this video, I'll help you to set up a single node Kafka cluster on your local machine. I'll also take it further and run a command line producer and consumer tool to test your Kafka installation. So let's start. The first thing is to download the Kafka binaries. So go to the Apache Kafka website. Hit the download button. We are looking for a binary download. You can get any of these versions. But let's take the one which is built with Scala 2.12. Our Spark is also built for Scala 2.12. So, keeping Spark and Kafka both to the same Scala version might be a good option. Hit the link and your download should start. Here is my download. Let me uncompress it. I got a tar file. Let me extract this one also. Here is the Kafka directory. Let me rename it. Then I copy it to a safer location. Here it is. Now let's look inside the folder. You should see the following directory structure. We have a bunch of directories here, but you will be using two of these directories. The first one is the bin directory. Let me show you. The bin directory comes with a bunch of Kafka command line tools. All of these are shell scripts. However, I am working on Windows machine, and these shell scripts are not going to run on my Windows laptop. Kafka also gives you the same tools for Windows, and you can find them in the Windows directory. If you are on Windows machine like me, you will be using these batch files to run and use Kafka. However, if you are using a Linux or Mac machine, then you should be using the shell scripts. Make sense? We will come back and run some of these tools in a minute. Let's go to Kafka home directory. You also have a config directory. The config directory also comes with a bunch of config files. However, we are going to use only two of these: zookeeper.properties and server.properties. The zookeeper.properties file is used by the Zookeeper server, and the server.properties file is used by the Kafka broker. These files come with a default configuration, and it should work out of the box. However, I want to make some changes to these files. Let's do it for the zookeeper.properties. Open the Zookeeper configuration file. It is a small file. You will see a configuration for the data directory. This configuration sets the Zookeeper data file location. The current value looks fine, but I want to change it to something like this. Now, when I'm starting the Zookeeper server, I'll create a Kafka logs folder in my current directory, and then a Zookeeper folder inside it. All the Zookeeper data will be saved in the Kafka logs/Zookeeper directory. That's all I wanted to change. Save it and done. Now we'll modify the server.properties file. This one is a bigger file, and most of the default values are good enough to start a Kafka server on a local machine. However, I want to make some changes. The first change is to uncomment the listener's port configuration. You can even leave it commented, and the default port is always 9092. However, I wanted to uncomment it. Rest all remains the same, and we scroll down to the log.dir's configuration. This configuration sets the Kafka data directory. Same as Zookeeper, I want to change this one also and make it something like this. So my Kafka data directory and the Zookeeper data directory parent is the same, but they use a different subdirectory, right? That's all. We do not want to change anything else. So basically, we wanted to change the data directories for Zookeeper and Kafka. Rest all remains as the default value. Now we are all set. We can start working with Kafka. However, it is always good to set the Kafka home environment variable and then add the bin folder to your path. So let me do it. I'm going to set my Kafka home. What is the home directory? The absolute path of my Kafka directory, right? The next thing is to add the Kafka binary to my path. Let me do that as well. I'm going to add the absolute path of my Kafka bin directory. Wait a minute. I'm on Windows, right? So it should be bin/Windows directory. If you are on Linux or Mac machine, you should add the bin directory to your path. But Windows users will be using the batch files, which are there in the Windows directory. That's all. We are all set. Let me test it once. I am going to follow Kafka Quick Start from the Kafka documentation. Here it is. Starting Kafka is a two-step process. Start the Zookeeper and start the Kafka broker. Here is the command to start the Zookeeper. Let me copy it and paste it in the command window. I'm not going to use the .sh file, so let me replace it with the .bat. So I'm using the Zookeeper server start.bat command to start the Zookeeper. This command takes zookeeper.properties file. So I must tell the path of the zookeeper.properties file. What is the path? Kafka home/config. Correct? You can use the environment variable or you can give the absolute path. It should work both ways. Let me run it. Good. Do you see this message? Binding to port 2181. So your Zookeeper is now started. Minimize this window and leave the Zookeeper running. Let's move on to the next step. The next step is to start the Kafka server. Here is the command. I'll modify this one also. So I'm replacing the .sh with the .bat. Then I'm changing it to the absolute path. Now it should work, right? Let's see. Great. Do you see this message? Kafka server ID 0 is started. So your Kafka server is also started. Minimize this window also and let Kafka running. We are almost done. However, I want to start a producer and a consumer to test if things are working fine. So let's start two more terminal windows. I'm going to use the first terminal to create a Kafka topic and start a consumer. Here is the command to create a Kafka topic. Let me change this .sh to .bat and run it. Topic created. Now let's start a consumer. Here is the command to start a consumer. Change the .sh to .bat and run it. We do not see any outcome here, but the consumer is running and listening to the Kafka topic. Let's come to the next window. We will start a producer here. Let me copy the command for starting a producer. Same here also. Change it to .bat and run it. Now the producer is running. So let me send some text messages from the producer and it should come here. Looks good, right? That's all. So we did the following things in this video. Downloaded and installed a single node Kafka cluster. Set up the Kafka home environment variable and add the Kafka binary tools to the path environment variable. Started Zookeeper and then started Kafka server. We created a Kafka topic. We started a command line consumer and a producer. And finally, we tested producer-consumer interaction. That's all. You are now all set to start learning Spark stream processing. See you again. Keep learning and keep growing.